haven't been paying enough attention to the cards, and I noticed this as I'm playing the red pink side, which I'd really hoped to be able to play the Romans, but their ages are not right. But they have this time ripple. Play during start empire, target player can add or subtract 1 to his empire's starting age. And I realized, wow, there might be other cards. Well, I looked back at the other empires, and there's one that I'd really like to do their card for. I'm not going to remember. Things like Vizier I'm never going to be able to catch. I can pick up a card at any time off the top of the discard pile. It says at any time, which means I can use it kind of as an interrupt. But I thought most of these would just be allowed to be played in the civilized action. But it's kind of hard to catch that. Now, in this case, I have this rare conjunction on the Macedonians, which I'm not going to get to play, with computing that's not for a long time. Play when the target empire finishes its action. It may take a second action immediately, any second action, even if out of order. I'm going to play that on these guys to give them a maneuver action or whatever it's called, which allows me to move my units. That's huge because I can spread out. So now I'll throw my rules here so I can start to see the terrain chart. Mountains are going to cost me 2 to move and penalty to combat values for them. Forests will cost me 1 to move, but 2 for cav, and they've got 2 notes. They become fertile eventually, and penalties for the cav. Okay, so what I want is South America's, Americas, and world, and I think I can get all of these. So again, we look at the movement costs. And we got a 2 to get into there. Let's see what those rivers. The rivers have no effect on movement. That's cool. Now there appears to be some fertile terrain in some of these. I don't know what that edge work means, whether that counts as fertile or not. I would almost assume not, but there are territories that don't have that, so I don't know. I've got to look that up. But anyway, we look at it. We're going to just spread out into all this territory. The forest only costs us 1. We could actually go 1, 2 out to here. And out to here. That avoids me the possibility of the Incas showing up on top of me, and it also is getting me further out. I think the more of a shell you can build in a game like this, the better it is. So that's going to get me a lot more glory, because I'm going to end up being top in the Americas, top in South America, top in the world. Not top in income, or in total cash, unless everybody spends below me. That was kind of perhaps a mistake, to spend all my money on these guys, although they are first and second right now. Alright, now, and yes, the rules do not contain the information. You have to look at the playbooks and all that to understand everything that's going on in or player's aid section of the rulebook. Unfortunately, that's not a way that I learn very well. I learn by reading rules. These rules are terrible for that. So now to here, I'm looking at Era 3 still. And for that, there are 3 kingdoms that are of interest. Or whatever. The Vikings and Danes, the Incas, and the steppe nomads. Well, the Incas are going to put me in Peru right up against these guys. That could be kind of painful. However, I get to treat all mountains as fertile during urbanization. That's a set of... that allows me to build cities more cheaply. That's an appealing ability. The Vikings and Danes are going to set me up in Denmark, right next to these guys. Ships are cheaper. My bonus is for being across the world, being in Britain, and being not in Europe and holding my homeland. This feels tricky, though. And then I have these steppe nomads, which start in a steppe area. I'm assuming that's this grassy stuff. Indeed it is. Which is never repeated anywhere except in the plains of Eurasia. Cav becomes cheaper. Now, here's the problem. My bonuses are territory in Asia I can get a point for, and land conflict won against other players. If I was sweeping across and fighting lots of older societies, this would be of interest. But otherwise, I get a bonus for production, or maybe these railways at some point. So I'll hold off on them. I could bone someone else's cards with these Minoans, but maybe democracy's better. And I can't use this at random. I can only use this in a civilized action when you use the event cards. Unless it says, you know, something like this, play at the start of a conflict resolution, unless it tells you when to do it. So I've put the Incas out of my mind, or I'm sorry, the steppe nomads out of my mind. The silver mine gives me a pile of money, and I can do this at any time. Or I can wait for a civilized action and gain 20 bucks, which is leading me to believe that I would rather have these. I'm not positive, but I think I'm going to go with the Vikings and Danes. I want to go with the people with the most boats. That's going to be my Pinkos. And so our setup is -6, which isn't terribly good. We get 15 bucks. We have no city because we're only in Era 3, so we're barbarian culture right now. No trade bonus. Ships initially are only going to cost me 3. Galleys can enter ocean, and I can count tundra when harvesting glory. Each land, this is in eras 2 and 3, liberated from a more advanced empire, lowers its progress by 1. So I can wreck these Saxons here if I do things right. Now here's the problem. I'm interested in Britain. I'm interested in holding my homeland. Those Saxons had a lot of money. They had 20 bucks, whereas I only have 15. So I'm going to have a tough time doing better than they did on the board. But not if I take an immediate 10 bucks from my silver mine. I'll purchase the units off. We got an immediate thought with the Chimu here. The English are the card for Vizier. That 10 bucks could be really useful to cranking out over more territory here. I don't see anybody in the Americas though, so I'm not going to do this because the English are too valuable a power to throw away. They look really, really good. Of course, I still have my French too. Because of the technology that the Vikings or Danes started at, maybe I want horse archers. I actually bought myself a decent amount of spearmen because they're cheap, and a couple of these horse archers. I'm not sure if I'm clumsier than usual today or if it's these counters. They feel difficult to manipulate. They're very slick, but maybe I'm just clumsy as well. Anyway, that's the end of the Viking Dane turn. And we move. This player had an interesting choice of kingdoms basically between the Swedes. And I like this Empire Fragments option. That will allow me to hurt the guy just in front of me and maybe pick up another empire that way. Or I could target a leader with that. On the other hand, things are pretty crowded over here already. I got some neat advantages in terms of being like the guy with the most ships would be an advantage for me. And my initial ships would be cheap, but it just is feeling really, really crowded there. And the Koreans seemed like a better choice. The Koreans, for victory points, I'm interested in Northeast Asia, which hopefully is all of this, but I'm not again sure. You know what? I'm not sure what covers here. Is this part of Southeast Asia? Yeah, well, this is, and this is part of Australasia. Oh, cool. They spelled it out on a couple of these. They didn't spell it out over here. I don't know if that's part of Southeast Asia or part of are going to just be considered part of Asia as a whole. I'm thinking it's probably part of Southeast Asia. Anyway, not well spelled out in a lot of things in this game. So my decision here, the only thing I'm worried about is maybe this peace treaty is cool, but I can't do that right now. Counter spy, hey, that could affect, that can cancel out some other cards as an immediate. But again, I feel like these have to be put face up. I feel like the advantages the Koreans provide is better than anything I can get off that card. And what are those advantages? Well, I get a victory point for this and a victory point for this. That's almost certain. Level of progress, I'm not going to get a victory point because gray's ahead of me and I need to be in the top two, and purple's closer in the turn order. So that point's not going to come to me, but I can probably get the 2 points for cash. I chose not to I chose to leave myself a lot of cash on hand just to get that extra glory there. All right, we'll keep moving. Annoying things like this card in the in my sixth player, Unique Conjunction. I saw one earlier. Play immediately after action markers are placed on all empires. Specify one action type that converts to a pass action for every player that turn. This is fine in an opposed game, but when you're trying to play things solitaire, especially when you don't know that you have to look out for stuff like that. If you're like me, hey, I deal out the cards and I try to handle each player's turn individually. Highly interactive game play tends to be really annoying. So I could have, say, played a wild card here and said, start empires not allowed, and blown everybody's turn out of the way. I didn't. But that would have definitely been a powerful use. Looking at my cards, I'm going to ignore the free state. This is sort of a, these are kind of a gimme. You don't get a hell of a lot of cash on them. They're not great empires, these kind of generics. But you can place it in any area without a land or capital adjacent to some word I can't make out on the card. But we'll say it's probably a or the or some or non-neutral area. I'm not going to do that, but I've got these Irish Goths, who I think is what I was probably thinking of, and that's it. Everything else is not available. So the Goths are going to put me somewhere in the Baltic, which will of course be in this real clusterfuck right up here. Cav is cheap as long as I'm small, and I get to hurt opponent who are more advanced than me. I also get victory points from taking territories from more advanced, and if I'm the biggest in Europe. I have a lot of money, but I already know there's a decent amount of money there. I'm kind of iffy about this, but it may be the best I can do. The other is the Irish, who victory point wise get a point for having their homeland, point for being first in Britain, and they get points if they can be Christian, if they can have the most Christian areas or somewhere in there. But that doesn't seem likely anytime soon. I'm allowed to invade more cheaply in eras 2 or 3. I don't remember what the penalty for that was, but there was one. I just don't see them as making a lot of sense at this point. So I'm thinking I'll go with the Goths. And I'm not thrilled by it, but I want something with a lot of horsies, and more stuff happens in Europe. Because of the cheap cav, I was able to buy piles and piles of units. I bought all my infantry, all my cav, except for the chariots. And then I also bought a unit of archers, spending all my money. Now, the problem, though, is most of this is forested terrain, and the cav don't do well in that. I want to be big in Europe, but Europe stretches out down into here. I can grab lots of territories with some of these forces eventually. The cav are faster than other things, but that'll be 2-3, 2-3 into areas like that. Alright, one more. Once again, a problem with me doing this solitaire. Not being able to look at all the cards, and for 7 people that's tough to do in an interactive game. This Oi, It's My Go. Man, this is a powerful card at the beginning of the game. You didn't have to bid anything. I should have remembered this because I was looking through. And you could just say, hey, I get the turn marker. The problem is, I'm not sure I could do this on the first turn because the turn marker, I'm not sure when the first turn starts. Probably with the play of the, yeah, it probably happens after that initial setup where you're putting your bid card down. So I could have just used this to guarantee myself first go. Now the difficulty with that is the Arabs may well be the thing I want to use. They're very, very powerful here. I'll be getting at least one leader, either Muhammad or Al-Hazan, and a lot of bonuses here. Cheap cav, desert count and harvest glory, and earn income in production. In age 3 I'll get an elite marker and 2 free maneuvers after setup. That's pretty sweet. I certainly don't want to, I want to play that while we're still in age 3 rather than at some other point. The question is this my best option at this moment? It may well be. This would be starting down in Medina. That's the location of it, which is over here. Power, I want world, I want Islam. Now that's a problem. I'm not sure how I'm going to get Islam. Like, that's what I want most with this card. I'm assuming Islam is an artifact. I got Jihad. Hinduism, industrial, internet, Islam. The Empire adopts the Islamic religion, put an Islam artifact. So they get bonuses for taking from non-Islamic. They lose glory when they lose things. Does this have a special on it that gives it Islam automatically or something? No. So without that, there go a lot of my points. I don't know what little pyramids mean. They mean having the most artifacts. So otherwise, I just get a shot at world, and I've got a lot of money, and homeland, and that's it. That may not be worth doing. Other options here, homeland, Africa, and world. Of course, a lot less money. but bonuses each time of point glory each time I get progress. Now this allows me, I think, to take part of an empire. I can't read all of it in this. Maybe if I get under some light here. Target empire picks one of its areas, then you pick one, it picks one. You each, God, these are unreadable. Control the areas you pick. You both use the same empire card. Each controls the forces in its areas. Replace original units with yours, and you lose a progress level. So this is kind of like that fractionization. There's one that divides an empire into factions, that you're both going to be using the same card. I guess you can put your capital marker on that card as well to help indicate it. The negative effect of that, it sounds great, you know, hey, I get part of your stuff. If you're used to History of the World, you're like, oh, that's cool, I get some more pieces. Yeah, but it's a new empire. It uses up one of your empire picks. And you have so few in the 7-player game that I don't know how terribly valuable that is. Okay, and I think the only other one I have here is the Magyars, which get bonuses in Europe and World. They start with 18 money. Initial cav are cheap. This looks pretty damn sweet compared to the payoffs that I'm going to get off of the Arabs. Catapults cost 5 in ages 1 to 3. That means I'm not going to have them as cheap missiles. Horse archers, frontline value, add 2 to horse archers' frontline value, and 1 free maneuver after setup. That sounds pretty damn sweet because it gives the free maneuver too. The Arabs are available longer, so if somehow time passes very quickly, that'll be an issue. So I think that's what we're going to do. The difficulty there, of course, is if I'm going to play the Arabs too, I probably want the Arabs to have the bigger counter mix. But if I'm not going to play the Arabs for some reason, maybe I want to have the Magyars have the bigger counter mix. They certainly have a nice setup here in terms of things, and they'll start in the Volga down here, which, oh wait, maybe this is the border to Asia. I thought I was out here. Yeah, I think this has to be the border to Asia here. That makes a lot more sense. You wouldn't want things like Siberia. Yeah, I think I noted that the Urals was there. All right. Well, I think we're going to go with the map. Kind of in the location, the part of the turn where we look at everybody gets progress. Everybody except the guy who had a wild card here, the orange, and anyone in a dark age. Now there's a dark age here. So gray's not going to go forward. Now maybe I have a card that can help with this. Who knows? You know. Doesn't look like it. But that's a level of detail that I just can't go into when I'm playing, is to look at everybody's instance and stuff. There's a reason that I don't play, say, Magic the Gathering in solitaire. It just doesn't work. Well, if a game's filled with lots of interrupts, if it's not just 1 or 2, it's going to be tough. And this has too many options for it, and the cards are tough to read. Anyway, let's move things forward. Who doesn't get it? Orange. Everybody else. I hope that wasn't orange. That was orange, I guess. Now, that may be brown. Wait a minute. Maybe it's not orange. Maybe it's yellow. Yellow doesn't get it. See, this looks orange, so it confuses me, but it's the player with the yellow pieces who does not get to advance. So there's our progress for this turn. And now the next thing we do is we harvest the glory. Oh boy, this is going to be kind of painful. So let's take a look at our, well, let's start from the start. Let's take a look at our Saxons. They have nothing in Britain, and in Europe, they have one location. Well, these guys have more than one, so I'm in second place. So that means I get a glory for that second place finish, and that's gray. These are kind of upside down in terms of order. So that goes there. Is there anything else that gives me glory? An empire with the totals high. No, these are just specifying what gives it to you, what gives you the bonuses in each thing. All right, so that's all that gray is able to get on this first turn. Over here to the yellows, South America, I'm the top in that. That gets me 1. The Americas, I'm on the top in that. That puts me to 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 areas in the world. I'm second in the world. That gives me a 3rd point. I am not highest in money, though. So yellow goes up 1, 2, 3 points. Over here, these Chamas, they have their home area. That's worth a point. They have the majority in Southeast Asia. That gives them the 2nd point. How are they on money? Well, they're not in the top 2. So they're going to get 2 points. Over here for our Vikings, they have their homeland. They don't have Britain. They're not in the top 3 in the world, are they? See, gray is number 3 in the world because we got 2 people who got to move. So they're not in the top 3 in the world. So far they're at 1 point, and they have nothing outside of Europe. So that's this pink guy. He goes under his counter. Over here for the Koreans, they have their home territory. That's 1. Northeast Asia, that's a 2nd. Progress. Purple went before them, so they're only 3rd in progress, so they don't get that. But wealth, they are the highest, so they're up to 4 points on their score from that. And the game is just going to get harder. Okay, so these guys, 2 for Europe for the Goths. They are neither in 1st nor 2nd place in Europe, so they get nothing. And 1 per land liberated for a more advanced empire. That happens as it happens, so they don't have to worry about that. So they gain nothing at this point. And then we go to our final. And of course, if you have multiple empires, you're going to be adding this up for each. The Magyars have the maximum in Europe is 2, and they're the biggest in the world. So they're going to grab 5 quick victory points right off the bat. Not money. So they take the lead there. And now we flip through the rule book to get to make sure there's nothing else. Now we go to the turn ends, which is going to move the first turn marker here, giving them the first shot. Now, why is it going to get harder? It's going to get harder because not only does each person have multiple empires, so they're going to be making more decisions, but now we have to make the decision of which menu action to take, right? It's no longer going to be clear, oh yeah, I either want to start an empire or I want a wild card so that I can start an empire if I can, but maybe throw my cards away if I end up in a really bad position. We're not seeing a lot of advancement yet. I think in order to get this advancement going, you have to do something. I think it's the civilize action, but I'm not sure. Got to do something to move that forward, and damned if I remember what. You know, the way the rules are written, they don't sink in at all. No concept there. It's purely procedural and badly written procedural to boot. I'll look to... Nah, the hell with it. I'll just load this up. Try to figure it out as I go. But we may just see people not being able to figure out what to do because of my inability to cope with these roles.